Today we're going to be taking a look at another unit from the newly released 10th edition indexes, this time the slightly stronger, slightly more expensive version of the Orks Battleline infantry, and that is of course the Beast Snagga Boyz. Now these grizzly green fellas come in at honestly a fairly decent price of 105 points for 10, or you can double them up and bring a big squad of 20 for 210 points, so they do work out to be 10.5 points per model, which really isn't actually all that bad for what they can do. They are up half a point per model compared to their 9th edition versions, but their profile does come with a few key improvements. Straight off the bat, they have an extra inch of movement, going to 6 from 5, which may not seem like much, but it is actually quite a significant boost. It really will let them get up the board and get into melee much more quickly now. Yes, an inch may not seem like it's a big difference, but when you have a very melee focused unit and a very melee focused army, every little bit does count. And with rules like advance and charge from the army warg mechanic, this will really let you make it into combat a whole lot more reliably than you could before. They also, on top of that, gain an improved save, jumping to a 5-up rather than a 6-up, which again may not seem like much, but it is a really big improvement. It lets them actually get a save against -1 AP, and of course have a much better chance of surviving AP 0 shots. So with the reduced lethality in 10th as well, with a lot of attacks going down in AP, the fact that their save has gone up makes it even more beneficial for them than you would initially think. If they'd got this back in 9th, you would have been well within your rights to think, well, pretty much every gun in the game is like -2 or -3 or -4 or -10, so it isn't actually going to make a big difference. But lots of guns in 10th edition are now 0 AP or -1 AP, so this will actually affect the Beast Snagga Boyz a lot more, and you will actually be making a lot more saves than you would have ever done back in 9th edition. They do, however, lose their 6-up invuln, which they had in 9th, but this is actually replaced, and in many ways it is actually improved in addition to their better armor save, because they now have a base 6-up Feel No Pain, which really is fantastic and something that, in my opinion, the Orks should have always had anyway, just from a fluff point of view. But from a purely mechanics point of view, this means that against something like an AP 0 bolter, 20 shots from a tactical squad would have killed about 3.7 of these guys in the old 9th edition version of the Snagga Boyz, whilst into this new profile it will only kill around 2.4. So that's saving you almost 1.5 wounds worth of damage alone, thanks to this new profile, which is really rather good. They do of course also benefit from the Army Warg rule and also the detachment rule of Get Stuck In, which lets them gain a 5-up invuln, +1 attack, +1 strength and advance and charge for a turn with the Warg, and then sustained hits 1 when they're in melee with Get Stuck In. So they are definitely a melee combat unit. It is very much a melee focused detachment and army at the moment, and they are pretty scary when they do get into combat. Each boy has a chopper which lets them swing 3 times, and they hit on 3s at strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage. Notably, unlike a lot of other Battleline infantry weaponry in 10th, they get to keep their -1 AP, which is again a really nice little bonus for them. And then even better, they have their Monster Hunters rule, which means they can reroll hit rolls against monsters or vehicles. Now, in the interest of fairness, it is worth saying this is slightly worse than the +1 to hit that they had in 9th. And also, you've got to take into consideration that monsters and vehicles, by and large, have gone up quite significantly in toughness. So whilst you are still going to be pretty good at hitting monsters and vehicles, with only strength 5, you are still going to struggle to wound a lot of monsters. So this isn't the most amazing buff, but I do like the fact that although it's arguably worse from a mechanics point of view compared to the +1 they had in 9th, it does tie in quite nicely with the sustained hits rule from Get Stuck In, and means that you can potentially spike it even more to get more hits in when they're fighting a big monster thanks to those rerolls. So to put it in perspective, on a Warg turn, A Snagga Boy will have 4 attacks at strength 6 with 6s to hit exploding, and then of course re-rolling against monsters and vehicles. So 9 of them, not counting the knob because he has a power snapper instead of a chopper, but 9 Beast Snagga Boys means that you can expect to get about 10 wounds through onto a Marine Toughness 4 3-up save profile, so you will kill off a good 5 of them in a single round of combat. And then when you do take into consideration the knob, his power snapper adds another 2 damage into that mix. So a squad of 10 Beast Snagga Boys on the charge in a war will likely kill a good 6 or so intercessors when you charge into them, which for 105 points is a pretty good trading value. It's worth mentioning as well, one of them can also take a thump gun for a bit of shooting if you want. It's D3 shots at strength 6, 0 AP and 2 damage. It's not great considering you are hitting on 5s, and it also doesn't have assault, and you are probably going to want to be advancing these guys most of the time anyway, either to get them up the board or in a warg to advance and charge them. So I personally wouldn't ever bother with the thump gun. I would just go for pure melee, just get into combat and just chop the enemy to pieces as soon as you possibly can. In terms of their overall rules within the army, there are a few good stratagems to help boost them even further. We do have Orks is Never Beaten, letting you fight with your boys even if they get killed before they can swing. And then also Unbridled Carnage is really good, letting you proc critical hits on a 5+ for 1 CP, which really will let you leverage the most out of those sustained hits in melee and just do an absolutely obscene amount of hits into an enemy squad. On the more defensive front, you can make them even sturdier with Arda's Nails, which gives you a -1 to be wounded, which is always a really good ability to have, but on toughness 5, it's going to come in really handy because it's going to make even things like bolters and bolt rifles and chainswords, all that sort of strength 4 weaponry, go from wounding you on 5s to now wounding you on 6s, which means your improved durability will go even further towards keeping your boys alive to get into combat and to actually kill the enemy. And of course, for purely getting into that engagement range, Here We Go is back, although it is slightly different again compared to Ninth. This just now adds +2 to your advance and charge rolls for a turn. So it is good. If nothing else, getting +2 to charge is really handy, but of course this gets exponentially better in a warg because this gives you an extra 4 inches to your overall movement. So on top of your boosted 6-inch move, you can now expect a squad with this stratagem to go 6-inch move, 5.5-inch advance, and a 9-inch charge, for a total of a 20.5-inch threat radius, meaning second turn charges with a warg can be pretty much all but guaranteed. Now, being Beast Snaggers, the regular Orc characters can't join them. You can't put a War Boss or a Pain Boy in them. Instead, they have their own unique version of the Beast Boss and the Pain Boss, and you can attach these to the squad. And I think for a 20-man Snagga Boy squad especially, either of these can be a very helpful addition in their own way. Unlike regular boys, you can't attach 2 characters to them, which is a shame, but either the Pain Boss or the Beast Boss are both fairly decent additions to certainly a 20-man squad of Snagga Boys, I think. The Pain Boss grants a 5-up Feel No Pain to his squad, meaning your boys will now have a 5-up armor and a 5-up Feel No Pain, again massively boosting their durability. And then also once per game with his Grot Orderly, he can return D3 models to his bodyguard unit. It's not super amazing because you could just roll a 1, and even if you roll the maximum of 3, that's still only adding 30 points worth of models back. But still, it's a nice way to get yourself back over half strength if you are under it and worried about battle shock, or you just want a few extra attacks to go into the enemy, or you're on an objective and you are losing it by 1 OC value and you just want to take it from your opponent. You can use this to get an extra couple of OC to take it back from them. So there are uses to this. And I mean, in theory, you could run 3 units of 20 Beast Snagga Boys and 3 Pain Bosses, which would bring you 3 incredibly durable bricks charging up the board that would be really hard for your opponent to get rid of. If you're looking for a more offensive output though, what may be better is attaching the Beast Boss. He can join the squad. Again, a 20-man is probably going to be better just in terms of being the most optimal in terms of what he gives, and he gives that squad +1 to hit. So now your boys can be hitting on 2s and re-rolling that against vehicles and monsters, which means against them, they are basically going to have 97% accuracy, which is really, really good. And then on top of that, he does add his own pretty terrifying melee potential to the output with a good amount of high strength 2 damage attacks and devastating wounds to just help you pulverize anything that your squad gets into combat with. So I would say if you want a durable objective holding brick, the Pain Boss is a good choice. If you want to just do the most amount of damage possible and intend to get the squad into combat as soon as they can, then the Beast Boss is going to be who you want to bring. But I mean, at the end of the day, even just on their own with no characters joined, for just 210 points, 20 Snagga Boyz can do a hefty amount of work with a much improved defensive stat line, slightly better movement, and still some very, very solid anti-infantry attacks. They really, really can make their points back when they get into close combat, or are just still a fairly durable brick all by themselves for holding objectives. I think what is probably the last thing worth mentioning for the Beast Snagga Boyz is a potentially great combo with an enhancement, which is Follow Me Lads. And what this does is if you give it to a character and they join a unit, that unit gains plus 2 inches to their movement. So this on, say, a Beast Boss can get a squad of Beast Snagga Boyz up to movement 8, which is, like Eldari level movement speeds, and could, in theory, with a little bit of luck alongside a War and the Here We Go stratagem, potentially get you that turn 1 charge off. It would mean rolling slightly above average because you're still getting a 22.5 inch average from this, but if you use a reroll or you just roll slightly above average, it is very, very possible to get into combat with 20 Beast Snagga Boyz and a Beast Boss in turn 1 and just absolutely ruin your opponent's day. So that is the Beast Snagga Boyz. For me, I just love them for their aesthetic and their lore as much as anything else. I love playing them because I think they look really, really cool. But for just 10.5 points per model, I do also think they genuinely have some seriously good play in 10th edition too, with big 20-man squads just either being reasonably good objective holders or just outright menaces to enemy squads from their pure weight of attacks. But as always, what do you make of them? And will you be adding any Beast Snagga Boyz to your Green Tides, or do you think that the regular Orc Boys are just better? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.